asked to speak about. Oh, okay, great. I'm glad you're recording. If you need me to redo the beginning, let me know. Um, so to be asked to speak about the future of beading, it was a little daunting. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's a big, tall order, and I accepted the challenge. It was like, okay, we'll figure this out. We'll put our heads together and really do an overview of what's ahead for us. And I know, I know. Oh wait, that date. Sorry, on that screen, that slide is a little bit off. I don't know where that date came from. Sorry about that. Um, I know that we all want to hope for the best and really look to the future with hope and happiness and joy and know that everything is going to be just fine. And I do think that it's very important before we get to that point that we look back. History repeats. And I think for me, especially now that I've been doing this for a really long time, everything is cyclical, everything comes back around. And thinking and doing a little bit of research, came across this amazing piece of information from the Museum of Beadwork. And I remember the first article, one of the first articles I wrote about beading way, way, way back. I cited how Christopher Columbus was wearing coins as a belt and as an adornment, but also for trade. And it's like, okay, well, that's not that long ago in the grand scheme of life, right? So the Museum of Beadwork cited this archaeological find of something that is dated likely 100,000 to 70, maybe 70,000 years ago, where they clearly had the right tools, they had interest, and they had the materials to create something that they were willing to adorn themselves with. And there to us is possibly the beginning of beadwork. So I don't know. I think that if it lasted that long, there's a whole lot still in the future. And I like to believe that. Um, Along my path, as I said, I feel everything is cyclical. There's so many things that come back around, and I I wish everything could stay the same, but I think that would be something that is my 20-year-old self would believe. And now in my 50s, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not true. Nothing stays the same, and that's okay. But it is very important that we, assess where we are, what we're doing, how we're doing it. And for me, there's so many different levels of entry into our field. Whether you're coming in from being an experienced quilter and now you want to take on beading, or maybe you're just new to everything. And to me, the foundation is so important to have available to anybody coming into what it is we do. And so having the basics available, I would feel like 70% of my career, I have developed content around the basics and making sure that they're well written, well illustrated, and something that's accessible and tangible for people to be able to start from wherever they're coming from. And also not to, make people feel bad. I think there's sometimes instructions that are somewhat condescending, or there's presentations that are somewhat condescending. And I just, there's a way to do it. And I feel confident that I have been taught and have executed in helping people understand how to do the basics. And from there, all of this newer group of people providing education, they are also doing an amazing job with the basics and then taking it to this amazing level. And I think that is so tremendous that the field has grown to such diversity, experience, and so much breadth of knowledge that is being shared in all different ways. I think that is amazing. And as long as we all remember that the basics are really important, and sharing information and education in a way that is accessible is really important for us to survive, and to keep this craft and this art alive. Um, I think that we also know that making gives us a true health benefit. And that means something different to everybody. But I know, especially during challenging times, when you sit down and you're quiet and you use your hands to make something, it is so grounding. It is so helpful. It kind of tunes out the noise. It tunes out the negativity that may be going on around you. And it just gives you that peace that you need to heal and recover. And everybody comes at that from a different perspective, but I'm sure everyone in the room can relate to that in some way. And I think that's also important to always remember and to help people realize like you can actually help yourself by beading or knitting or whatever it might be. But making is such a strong part of our mental health, our physical health, and just finding that peace. And then obviously for me, what I feel very strongly about is being in person. And I think you all in the room together today, and for those of you who will be at other future events together, you know the joy it brings to be together in person. And that is so important. I think we all learned how to survive and be able to live singularly and insularly and still create and still communicate with people. And we're like, okay, this is great. But there's nothing that can replace the joy of being with somebody in person. And I hope we can all find a way to convey that to others who aren't confident or don't feel comfortable or don't really understand what it means to be some like a part of a beat society like yours, where getting together and being with each other is just such a vital part of who we are as humans. It's just so important. So, back to the topic. The perspective that I tried to put on things to come to a conclusion to offer you something toward what does the future look like? You know, we always have trends. There's business insight, there's consumer insight, and there's a whole lot of faith that everything's going to be all right. But I digress, and I want to say that let me go back. I feel that there are other things worth noting before I get to what other people have shared with me. Um, I do feel that with the trends, I'll get back to the trends, that there's the basics. I think it came up in my conversation with Rochelle and Jan earlier this week. It came up on nearly every interview I conducted that that basic fundamentals are where people are at. And there's something to that, I believe, that we can all resonate with. And it may be that when you look at a piece that I have on the screen right now, like that's beautiful and I would love to make it. And I've been making jewelry a really long time and I'm like, oh, I don't know, you know, and then of course my skills, I know I could break it down and I could figure it out. But if I was new, that's intimidating. And so I think finding ways to help people find approachable designs is really important. Okay, so the other piece of the topic that we know we wanted to address was all of the changes that we're feeling and seeing happening in our industry, and what do we do about that? And I think it's a collective conversation, and I am only one voice. So I did turn to a lot of people to ask for their help in sharing with you perspective that I feel the industry is seeing as a cross section. And I'm hopeful that you don't mind me bringing in other people's voices to this conversation so that we can hear from others who have their own perspective based on their own either their businesses, their teachings, their making perspective. So I will start in no particular order. Juliana Avalar is the owner inventor of the Jewel Loom, and she is a weaving instructor. She's a very spiritual person, but she's also a very savvy business person. And she also, uh, I did not take my topics from what other people have shared. Like my presentation of what I believe was first and foremost what I came to my conclusion. And I think it's interesting to see from as we go through how many other people have very similar um, perspectives. So anyway, I'm getting back to Juliana. Um, she feels, you know, with the what's the right word? With the I don't want to I want to say the right word. With the overwhelming influx of friendship bracelets, a little different friendship bracelet style than what we've experienced back in the 80s and 90s. There is this very true source of basic jewelry making fundamentals and basic beading that is happening in our world. I mean, this woman who brought this trend to the forefront is truly impacting on a global level. And I know in there are some people who will take what they learned from her and bring it to their own personal making experiences. They will go from this friendship bracelet and they will say like, "Oh, I want to make something else." And I saw it firsthand at Bead Fest. They're like, "Well, we were making these friendship bracelets and now I'm here to get other kinds of beads to make something else but similar." So it is very, very possible that that trend that has been around now for quite a bit, thanks to all of her concerts, we will see something very strong come from that. Um, oops. There we go. Sorry about that. And she also feels very strongly in making sure that whatever we're doing, whatever we're offering, that we remember that people are starting from the beginning. No matter when they come into what we do, you're going to have some people who are new to the fold, and having access to information, and I know you do that. You have your longevity, your history of all of the videos that you've been offering and all of the content that you've been creating over the last few years is available. And I think that in itself is an amazing way of bringing people in and helping them feel comfortable, successful, and empowering them to want to continue. And then having the confidence to maybe take that next workshop or go on the retreat and be brave and learn something a little bit more challenging. And so, as I mentioned, Juliana is a weaver and she does on loom beadwork. And she's seeing people are working on smaller projects, not the bigger projects. So, again, I think that is really resonating. And again, I think that connects very strongly to what Rochelle and Jan and I spoke about last week. And Juliana took my tagline, "The future is bright." So I think that that is just hopefully a great way for us to start off from outside perspective, that there is definitely consistency in feeling like there is just wonderful perspective and hope in the future. Some of you may know Jay. She is a beading instructor. She's been beading for about 14 years, and she's very active, very strong instructor for the last 12 years. And she started out just from deciding that, she was sewing, knitting, scrapbooking, doing all of these amazing other art, and then decided to try beading. And then once she made jewelry with it, she was hooked. She said that's it. It became her career. So she definitely has concerns, and she has great hope because she has perspective where she is seeing so much passion for what people are doing, and she's helping empower them through her teaching. And some of what she is concerned about is knowing that some of the people she's teaching are making things, and they're making things to sell. They are having competition on a global level that is, some of the less expensive, I hate to use the word cheap, but really cheap, either knockoffs or just really inexpensive materials that make it either discouraging for people or really diminish the value of what it is we're creating, given what we make really includes materials that are much more refined and professional, and in some cases more expensive. So it is a little bit um, a little bit challenging. Um, so some concerns there. And this is another point that really comes up with very many people. Obviously, I can speak to this firsthand. We've lost a lot of magazines in this industry, and they really were what was the leading edge of bringing people in. And there's likely not an easy way to undo that. But it is important for us to find ways to continue to reach people. And I think what your Beat Society is doing is truly everything possible to bring in new people and to support them as they find their way into whatever direction it is they want to go. Okay. So here's another listing, another perspective on what Jay shares. Um, Let me catch up to what my list says so I can make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, so yes, so she is also feeling that beading is making a comeback, and also, feeling that there's younger people coming in making simple projects. I really think that is a trend that we're all going to experience and see. We just have to be aware of it. In my professional experience, there are some companies who want nothing to do with the beginners, that they are very hard to raise. They're very hard to bring in and convince to spend the money and to stay with us. But they are there. There are people who are interested in making, and I think it's very important. I know Rochelle is doing this every day, so I'm sure there's other people there who are also on. Maggie. I know Lisa. You ladies are always bringing in new people and helping empower them and help teach them, and that is just so important for us to be able to continue to feed the people who are interested as well as then help them welcome them into the fold. And sustainability, that's another topic that Jay mentions that she feels is really important to younger people as well as those of us who've been around and are paying attention. So it's also something to keep in mind. All right, so this is more from Kelly is a sales executive who works with Beadalon, so somewhat of a business perspective of a company who sells products versus uses them. However, Kelly is also a maker. She's been in the art field since 1998, and she's done the scrapbooking, beading, sewing, quilting, you name it. Her list is fairly comprehensive. And she also wanted what she shared with me to bring forward is that she feels that everything is cyclical. And in a workshop or a professional course that she did at Antioch University, she learned and helped kind of distill down to who the customers are. They are either fickle, casual, professional, or passionate, hardcore people, and they each fill a different um, niche in our industry. And when she translates that, she feels the fickle people, kind of more of the elementary school, Hobby Lobby, Michaels, little uh, less quality product selections. But it for those who stick around, they then do progress and get into the high school level. And so they are people who are trying different things and doing different things with better quality materials. And then, of course, there's the college level that they're doing what they can. They're shopping online, they're shopping everywhere they can. They're very savvy. So she had a very different approach and perspective on how she wanted me to share information, but also that she agrees everything is cyclical. Everything comes back around, and people are the number of people in the art field hasn't necessarily changed, but it's just that their focus is on something different than maybe in the beading field. If we're still feeling like that segment of the market is a little soft. Becky Nunn is also another business person, but also another maker. She's a strongly rooted in creativity and supporting artists, but she has made a business, a very successful business as a findings manufacturer, manufacturing pewter findings here in the United States. I had quite a lengthy conversation with Becky about this topic that I believe will lead to even greater and longer conversations. But she really feels very strongly that beading has been around forever. It has been something that we've been appreciating forever, like literally forever, as we can see now from the findings that the museum shares and puts forward on their own website. It really is something that has been around forever, and it's not going anywhere. It's just a matter of how we approach it. Becky also really feels that it is a spiritual renaissance, and things that she's seeing likely come through in culture. And one of the like trends, she's always spotting trends, and she's seeing this renaissance, this spiritual renaissance, where really embracing the power of women and looking back, thinking about Egyptian jewelry and different symbolisms and things like that. So that's very important to her and her business. It's also really an integral part of how she runs her business to be able to predict trends. So she was very happy to share with me that there's, you know, really positive. She feels it's very positive. And, she's also very practical and says that to every yin there's a yang. And so when there's positive, there's also a negative. So we just all need to kind of keep our ear to the ground and just find the time to find our flow state and just appreciate what it is we're doing and how we're doing it. Okay, Gene Power. Jean is worried but hopeful. If I could distill her words properly, she is worried but hopeful. Um, she feels that the hobby itself is shrinking. There's a lack of bead stores and magazines. It's not an easy hobby to pick up. I don't know that I agreed with her. And then I really thought about it. I'm like, oh, she's got a really good point. I guess the way I came into the field, to me, it wasn't hard, but I also had a lot of advantages that if you're just starting out, you're like, wait, what do I do? And if you are in the Michaels shopping or Hobby Lobby shopping, you don't necessarily, unless you have a book in your hand or somebody helping you, it can be a little confusing because there's a lot to work through. The bead, the threads, the needles, the conditioner, if you need to condition your thread. Do I need to condition my thread? Like all of these things that you just don't have a good handle on if you're just starting out. And then shape beads, enter shape beads. I can tell from what Jean shared, she feels that had a big shift in how things were evolving in the beading industry. As a publisher, as a side note, as a publisher, shape beads are what kind of helped resurrect beading in the magazine world. And we definitely received a lot of negative feedback from our seed bead people who were really not into shape beads. So there's likely a very clear division. We can maybe liken it to an election. Do you like shape beads or don't you like shape beads? Um, so anyway, she did say that that was certainly a bump in the road. And then another thing, and I haven't mentioned this yet because I try so hard to feel like we can not give it so much power, but COVID certainly did impact everything in our world, everything, including our wonderful beading industry. And part of what COVID did by having people withdraw and stay closer to home was they realized, wait, I already have so many things. I have a lot of beads. Already have a lot of jewelry. Why do I need to make beading? And then who went out? Who needed to wear jewelry? So it definitely shifted things. Um, but Jean also has great hope, and I was so glad to hear from her and know that she can see it from her perspective. She's like the friendship bracelets. She's another one who highlighted this trend. So it's certainly something to have so many people who were completely independent from when I asked them for information. She also highlighted the friendship bracelet. She feels very strongly that we need to show off our beadwork. And I think as a bead society, you likely wear your beadwork to your meetings or even maybe when you're online meetings. I know my mom is in knitting groups and everybody's wearing their knitting when they go to, Saturday morning knitting sessions. And it's something that, it for me, I try to wear jewelry every day, something that I've made every day, even if I don't leave the house. But I don't know if I do. And do you? Something to think about, something about showing it off, helping people have greater awareness, wearing your art, kind of being proud of what you did and what you made. Find the people and teach them, nudge them, support them, and mentor new people. So again, helping grow our field and helping them feel welcome. Um, I do feel, I don't know, I don't know if it's fair to say, 30 years ago, it wasn't an elitist club. It wasn't like people didn't feel welcome, but you certainly there's a barrier to entry. And I think that has been broken down completely, and the internet has helped with that. But I do feel that new people coming in, they need that hand, they need that support. And I'm glad to hear people like Jean and Jay and Juliana, whom we've heard from already, that they just feel the same way. And I know from my conversations with many of you, you also agree. So we're all on the right path. Sherry Serafini. So Sherry has been beading since 97. It's hard to believe a time when Sherry Serafini wasn't beading. I've actually known her since 2000, and the woman was steeped in beads, but she didn't start there. Started in polymer, for those of you who didn't know, and she wound up needing to be in the hospital with her mom, and beading became the thing that she could do to help her mentally be able to help her mom at that time. And it became a source of calm and peace for her that she then realized she had an affinity for. And my goodness, the woman is prolific and she continues to teach and she continues to share her talent. And her true talent is as an artist. And some of what she reflected on is that back when she first started, people needed her to teach them the stitches. They needed to know everything and they wanted to know everything. And, think about back when she started. even if she was teaching in the early 2000s, the internet was still not what it is today. So those of us who were teaching in the early 2000s, like you still got a catalog to find your material. You still, called somebody to place an order. The internet was not quite what it is today. So it is a little harder to think back on that and really process what that means and how things are now a little different and possibly learn from that. It's a little challenging, but she reflected recently from a trip that she just was taking, where people, as she's teaching, all she has to do now is say the stitch and they're off and running. They know the stitches, they know how to do it. They know, she's like, and she kind of misses that. She kind of misses being needed. But now what she's doing is helping them on the next level of their artistic creations, whether it's creating forms or structure or design. So she's still been able to support her students and people who are taking her workshops, but it's just from a very different perspective. Let's see, I think she also mentioned magazines. Want to make sure I'm covering all the things I'm saying. Okay, so some of what she offered is that she feels very strongly that it is long, long, long runway still ahead for beading, and some of what she's seeing includes getting back to in person. She has friends who are actually creating new shows, in-person shows, so that people can come back together. And to her, that means the world. And it is something that she's just so thankful that there are people out there who are still giving it a go and still trying to make it work. And she's supporting them the best that she possibly can on time. Okay. I don't want to skip over too much, but I also respect your time. Another Sherry also mentioned magazines. I mean, she actually just had an article published in Belle Armoire. If you haven't seen that yet, it's a wonderful article and something that it's wonderful that Belle Armoire is still publishing and that they took the time to include somebody like Sherry Serafini. I think that speaks volumes. All right, Jeff Elvin. I know all of you know and love Jeff, and they're the beads and gemstones and information that Dakota Stones really empowers us to all have as part of who we are as makers. I'm forever grateful to Jeff. He and Ricky have been such a great supporter of everything I've been a part of. Anytime you need something, ask them for something, they're always so happy to help and support however they possibly can to continue to sustain our industry. And I hopeful that you all feel the same way and that you agree. I feel like he's just such a strong supporter of all we do. And granted, he has a business, so it's to his benefit, but there are some businesses that are not as generous with their time and resources as Dakota Stones is. So with that, one of the things that Jeff says is that we are micro businesses. We only have so much to give, and inevitably parts of the business and the industry get neglected. And he feels the piece that he is seeing and hearing is in the area of neglect includes innovation. He said that attendees are feeling like when they come to a show, they're seeing the same old, and it's hard. I've been trying to think about how to take advantage of what he shared in this very deep perspective. And Jeff's a very intuitive person. He's very aware of what's going on around him. So I take his words very um, seriously. And I haven't figured out yet how to translate what he said and how to take advantage of making that into a positive. But I share this with all of you because I believe in each of us there is a way for you to innovate and find a way to help inspire somebody else. If people are feeling like it's the same old, well, we just need to show them new things and help them see different things and help in a way that is inspiring so that people continue to go to bead shows and come and learn and tune in to online education or experiences. It's very important. All right, we've got Kat Thomas. So she likens beading to music, and she feels that when you look at a keyboard, 88 keys, and all of the music you can create with just those 88 keys, the amount of beads and stitches that you have at your disposal, there is no reason why beading should not continue into forever. And although she did reflect on the fact that not every piece of music is good, so not every beadwork is a masterpiece, but it also doesn't have to be. It is still art. But there are ways to create joy. And joy was a very big word that she used consistently and wove throughout what she shared. And so she shares like with both the modest piece and the masterpiece, there is a little something called joy, and it's worth every minute spent creating it. Creative joy is the key. I felt this was such a powerful piece of information shared with me to share with you. And I don't know, maybe write it down or think about it, sit on it and really appreciate it for what it is, because that is what we do as we make something, whatever it is. Even when I make a loaf of bread, I am so happy. I am creating something. I am making something. And there's a moment where if you really think about it, you can feel it. You can feel that happiness, that joy. And if we can help other people realize that joy is in them when they make something, there's no reason for us to fear that this is ever going to go away. It will be different. It will be different, but it's not going anywhere. Um, oh, and Kath also offers that, everything is cyclical. There are ups and downs. And I think that's the same as the economy, the real estate market. It is everywhere. It is evident everywhere. And that is true in nature. We all have cycles. We all go through different things. And beating maybe just on the lower part of its trough. It would be great to go back to some of my analytic days where we would do these graphics of things and see where the dips and waves were, and just to see if it doesn't help resonate with what we're also feeling we're seeing. And then Kath adds, but as long as beading societies and guilds continue to show their beautiful art to the public, like the Beadworkers Guild, she's very connected to the Beadworkers Guild. She also just had an article published in the Beadworkers Guild journal, something also worth you looking into if you're not aware of what they're doing. An amazing organization that she feels has been truly, uh, I don't want to overemphasize her words, but she feels very strongly that the Beadworkers Guild has had a hand in sustaining and growing the bead stores in the UK. And she feels like anybody could be able to do that if they can do it. Okay, so we're coming in for a close. I wanted to end with something. This was from Katie Hacker. She was like, I may have taken this a little too seriously and had a little too much fun for it, but I figure this was a good time to put this in, take a moment. So, um, there's nothing really profound here, just a beautiful way to kind of bring things together and just say that currently some of the trends, Katie's very good at trends, is just the interpretation of traditional techniques. I think that's what so many of us do through everything that we do. We draw from inspiration from the past. We find ways to correlate history to what we're creating today. And it's just going to continue. It's just going to keep going. And we draw inspiration from fashion. I don't know if any of you take the time to watch any of the award shows. I personally used to have to watch them because I'd have to report on them. And now I find them somewhat either too late at night or unappealing or just boring. So I find other resources for finding what's currently going on in fashion, but there is so much to be gleaned from what is going on around us. And, if the friendship bracelet is the start of something new, we just need to get behind it and figure out how to help people realize that that's just the beginning. There's a whole lot more in front of you that you can grow on from what you just learned in that little stretchy bracelet that you made. With your best friend's name on it. No shame in making that bracelet, but let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's not stop. And then also Katie just emphasized how we are continuing, and this is a thread that runs throughout, I think, everybody's present conversation is the technology available to us. These few people highlighted here, among so many others, have taken the time to figure out how to reach the people where they are. Not everybody can be where you are, but you now have the ability to reach people where they are. And being able to connect with people in across the world, that wasn't something we could do 20 years ago. And it isn't for everybody, but it's for a lot of people. And that's where the people are when you can't get to a bead show, when you can't get to a bead store. Like I am here with you right now where you are, and I'm in Pennsylvania. So the technology is your friend. As much as it sometimes can be confounding and giving us trouble, it really is our friend, and it really does help bridge the gap. And we just thankfully have had a push. You know, COVID pushed a lot of people who were resistant to getting on a Zoom call for a knitting meeting or a beading meeting. You know, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then they're like, wait, I miss my friends. Is this is how I can see my friends? Okay, fine. Tell me how to do it. And now we're all doing it. And now, like, we've got people who were so resistant saying, like, oh, no, you just need to push that button. No, 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 Mary, do this over here. You know, it's like, it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to see happen and be able to watch happen firsthand. It was so wonderful. Anyway, Katie just emphasized that there are people out there doing the things. And if you need that boost of inspiration or you need that connection, there are so many people creating bridges to help reach people. And then I just started putting a few things together in this last slide, but I think I'll close there because I'm likely a little over time. Oh, yes, so you saw her piece. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to stop there and just say, I hope that was a good cross section and gives you, you know, perspective on how things are going in the world, what we're all seeing, what different people are seeing across the world and at different levels of our industry. You know, we've got businesses, makers, people who have been making for a really long time, some people who are new, and then different ways that people are approaching this wonderful industry of ours and helping just do what we do, especially with the void of magazines and bead shows and bead stores. We're still finding ways to do it. And one of the, I think, I feel like I've overplayed this analogy, but Netflix didn't start out as the what Netflix we know today. Amazon did not start out like the Amazon we know today. And as long as we continue to evolve and embrace technology, and if your beat society can be used as an example for so many other organizations, trust each other, work together, find the time to do what you need to do to be able to support each other, to then be able to support more people to join you. You have been global. You have had international members. That is a true testament to your reach, your ability to bring in people that attract other people that are not necessarily in your hometown. I mean, that that takes time and talent, and you have it. You have it in spades. And I'm just so in awe of all that you've accomplished. And I'm so I'm just I don't want to say amazed because it's anything's possible, but to have reached 35 years, to be as strong as you are as a community and as a society, and to still be within well without boundaries. You welcome all. I think that is just something so beautiful and so wonderful. And I'm honored to be a part of you. And again, I thank you so much for having me here today. I don't understand the question. Sorry. Oh, okay. So, if I could take a second, I wanted to share with you why I started my podcast. As part of my reemergence after I left my corporate executive job. One, I left my job because I had absolutely no time for creativity. I was working 70 hours a week and I was doing my darndest to help support and grow the business and sustain the business and do everything I possibly could to do all the things that I knew how to do. And I found that I was really just worn out and worn down and I just couldn't do it. And I wasn't actually doing what it was I did and why I was still in this industry. I wasn't doing any of it anymore. And so I said, I've got to stop. I have got to find my reset and restart my reasons and find my why. And I took about a month off to do family stuff. We always have vacations in August. And then in September, I really sat with myself and I asked myself, why? Like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? Why did I do this in the first place? And everything pointed to supporting the industry, supporting the artists, helping really raise their voices and elevate them. And without magazines and without a way to do that, I came to the conclusion that I would start a podcast. And I think part of it is because a podcast is fairly I don't want to say it's easy, but it's much quicker to start than it is to start up a magazine. And I didn't have the resources to really create a full online magazine, but I could start a podcast and I could just start at the basics, start at what I know. And what I know is people. And so I wanted to really give space and offer space to the artists, our businesses, people in the community. And this is the whole art community to share their stories. I think part of what I always loved about a magazine was hearing the stories, understanding the genesis of somebody's business or creativity and where they were going and what they have coming up. Like, how else do we learn what's coming up unless somebody tells you? So that was my reason for getting into podcasting. And I have been so overwhelmed and so grateful to the people who have said yes and taken a chance because if you know anything about podcasts, which I knew enough, I had nothing to offer them. I had no audience. I had nothing. I'm like, just come and hang out with me and talk, and I'll put it out there and hopefully somebody finds it. Well, I have now kind of like 10 months later, 9 months later, I finally hit my over 1,000 download mark, which is supposedly significant. To me, it seems like, oh my gosh, it took forever to get there. But we passed 1,000 downloads. We have hundreds of subscribers. So people are, they get notified and you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio podcast, YouTube Music, any of the main podcast platforms. My show is broadcast there. Like it's called an RSS feed. So you put it out there and they pick it up and they put it on their playlist. And if you subscribe, you get notified when a new episode is out. It's like magic. And all I have to do is just kind of hit a couple buttons and then that happens. But I also do it as a video. And I don't know that I'm fully taking advantage of this part of the platform yet, but as a visual community, I was like, I want to see the people. So for anybody who is maybe watching it like a TV show, you see the people and you just see us talking and you see me usually just nodding while people are talking and I'm just nodding, nodding my head. But it's out there. And so I broadcast it to my platform is on Spotify and then it kind of goes out to all the other platforms. I also upload it to YouTube as a video and then it's on YouTube Music. I do an article on the show itself that is then shared out to my newsletter file. So for anybody who's interested, please sign up for my newsletter in my email list. You can get there from my website. Shameless plug. And that happens there. And then social media, obviously social media. I put it out there. I highlight the show and I put it out to social media. And I always just hope for the best. I hope that's probably more of an answer than you needed, but hopefully that explains. Oh, it's called Heart and Hands of a Maker. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the support. And I really appreciate yours and Jan's time, Rochelle, for meeting with me and giving me the opportunity to share all about your bead society. I can't wait for that episode to release. Oh, and behind the scenes, I'll share while you're getting the next question in. I have my son who's a media, I'll say he's a media professional. He has a degree and he does a lot of work on the side. He's my editor. He's also my video editor. We're working on a new project video, so he helps me behind the scenes make it a little more polished than I would have been able to do on my own. Mm. So for artists who really like to make big designs, and you know the market is looking for smaller designs, I say make what makes you happy. I'm watching you. Is that I say make what makes you happy. Oh, so right now my podcast has no advertising. I make zero money. People ask like, "Oh, do you make a lot of money in your podcast?" Nope, I haven't made a penny. I suppose at some point, I suppose at some point I could probably get some advertising once I get my numbers a little higher. But I'm not. Yes, I really feel very strongly that I, I don't know that I have a platform, but I've always long felt that if you have a platform, you should use it for something good. And for me, my heart is with all of you, and I would love to support you, whether you are the maker or the business, and connect you with the people who want to know about you. That's why I stayed in publishing for all those years and did what I did and fought for that business for so many years, because it's just something about it that is what I truly believe in. And so maybe I'll never make any money on it, and that's okay. Like I said, he's my son, so he loves his mama. But back to the large pieces, I feel very strongly that you should make your art. And something that I've noticed with people as they're getting back to doing shows is they have these beautiful art pieces and signs with their beautiful art pieces. Even like when I was on Sherry's website the other day, grabbing her website address for her slide, um, her banner on her website has some of her larger pieces, like a close up of her larger pieces. Like you've got to make what makes you happy. But if you also want to sell your work, then yes, in fact, you maybe should make a smaller pair of earrings that, in a series that makes you some money to help pay for the bigger pieces that really make you fill your heart. Which I know you probably already knew that. So maybe my answer isn't that enlightening, but like you have to make the crown that Rochelle has on her head because that makes her happy. But then you also have to make the earrings you could sell for $35 at the next Renaissance fair. um, so I have, I rely on when I'm actually at events to talk to the people, mostly with the people from Japan. But I haven't had that opportunity to be in person with them. I went to Tucson and there wasn't really the same people in Tucson this past year, or at least not that I came across. But I really, again, as a responsibility, I feel like when I attend the shows, especially in Tucson, it's a good barometer for what the industry is doing. And I will say this past Tucson, I was not a vendor, so I can't speak on how much selling was going on or how much buying was going on, but the amount of people who were in Tucson attending the shows was nearly like it was pre-COVID. I was there what year was that? 2020. I was there in 2020, and then I've been there since, I picked it back up again in 2022. 2022 and 2023 were a little bit, what's going to happen? In 2024, it was like, oh my gosh, everybody's back. Even the shows, the vendors, the floor was much fuller than it had been the past couple of years. Even 2020 was a little bit off just because there were like COVID was already happening. The coronavirus was already something that was out there, and some people were traveling. And even I was wearing a mask despite the fact that it wasn't, a pandemic yet. Just because you knew it was something was not good, something was going on. So I feel very confident that after last Tucson, that things really in the industry as a whole were taking a turn. I think and I don't think I mentioned it clearly, but I think any year there's an election year, it's always disruptive. It's always disruptive. And it isn't that the economy is bad, it's that people are just scared or they're cautious and they're holding on to everything with all their might. And so it changes the buying behavior, it changes what money is out there to support the economy. But and I've seen it, like now that I'm older, I could say like, oh no, this has been happening for a really long time. So I do think that the election is something that people are kind of hinging a lot of things on, and I don't know which way it'll go and what that'll mean. I don't. I have no idea. Oh, I wish. Oh my gosh, I wish. I have not heard of anybody with the means to be able to produce seed beads in this country. I have not. I'm sorry to say I have not. And I'm always all for manufacturing in our country. And I was glad to see Kirsten Aiello is, she's picked up where Tierra Cast left off and she's built a foundry and she's going to start manufacturing in the US. Becky Nunn still manufactures in the US. Beadalon manufactures in the US. And I'm glad for all of those things, but I've not heard of anybody doing seed beads. I'm sorry. Any new beads on the horizon? Popular as the multi-hole beads. Well, I'm glad you think they were popular. That's a good I'm telling you, as the content director back in those days, that was like that was a little dangerous. But those beats are beautiful, and I think they really make for some dynamic, dimensional creations. I think there's a true place for them in anybody's toolbox. Um, no, and I think this is part of what Jeff Elvin was getting at. Like there is no new innovation. And one thing that Becky and I talked about at length was that there is still a supply chain problem. And it may not be something that we as consumers or as just general public are aware of, but there are still supply chain problems. And I know after the pandemic hit and people were starting to get back to selling, there was nothing new in the market because they had to sit on their inventory for so long. They still had the inventory that would have been new in 2021. So it slowed that innovation down, and people had no choice but to just keep selling what they had on hand versus putting money into developing new. And maybe that'll start to shift this year as we go. For me, Tucson is like my Academy Awards time frame. Like that's when the year starts for me, and then we go through all the shows that happen throughout. There's a lot of momentum on the B2B side at the NAMTA. I don't know if you're familiar with them, the North American Material Trade Association. They are endeavoring to bring bead and jewelry to the forefront, as is H&H Americas. And H&H is the organization that has run shows over in Cologne in Germany. And they are now going on their third year here in the US, trying to also be a trade organization that helps companies come together and interact with each other and really help bridge those divides that we have. Because if you, and maybe this isn't something you're familiar with, it's newer to me as well, but as a fine artist, you typically use oil paint and really, really special brushes. And then there's the craft side where, the CHA Craft and Hobby Association show where you had the friendship bracelet materials, you had the Sizzix machine, you had seed beads, you had jewelry, you had, it's like, so these two worlds are coming together. And this will be the third year for both organizations where everybody's coming together. And for H&H specifically, they are initiating for this year for their first time a bead and jewelry section. And their floor plan is showing a much smaller footprint to be realistic for what might be possible. But I attended a meeting and all of the big players were there. So I'm hopeful that this will be a new arena for them so they can start to kind of work together and find a way to make the whole industry be a little bit more holistic. Oh, I I don't. I used to have a little inside information on the Pantone colors. Oh my gosh. So do I know the Pantone colors for 2025 and the impact it has on the bead world? Well, what I do know, what I have been more on the fashion side and more on the marketing of how Pantone does impact. Typically, when they release the color, it's really so that you know what's coming, so you can start to prepare for the following season when that's going to start showing up in fashion. So it's usually by the time they tell the general public, it's so that you can now the manufacturers have known about that for a year. So I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't have the inside scoop anymore. But they've known about it for a year so that by the time they tell the general public, like where I'm at now, then you could go to the store and you can buy those beads so that by the following year is when you're going to start seeing it, and then you're right on time. That's how it's supposed to work. But people like Swarovski and all of the big manufacturers, so that you can see it in home decor. And that's usually so that is usually also a tell. You start to see the color in home decor before it's announced to us. So if you see some ads coming out, maybe there's a color in there that's like a little bit new and different. Chances are that's one of the new palette colors. I say stick to what you like, because there's been some Pantone colors I think they were just awful. Like, I'm not going to deal with that color. I don't like it, even if it is supposed to be popular. Oh gosh. I think I made this scarf and I'm like, this makes me happy because it has all the colors I love in it. And it's like I start to see like, oh wait, I think green, it just makes me happy. So do what makes you happy. Because then at the end of the day, at least you've brought joy to yourself, even if it doesn't hit all the bells and whistles to put you on the front page of being on trend. Make your own trends. Oh, so where do I think there'll be some new innovation? Well, I know that Beatsmith has been working on the symbols, and I feel like every year they come out with new symbols to help make it possible to construct beaded designs in a way that is different, and also to finish designs in a way that is a little bit different. And um, I always like to see what they come up with and what they might have that's new. I feel that talking with Becky, Becky was feeling her trends reports were on Egyptian, and feeling like that was coming forward for her. So I think there'll be some changes there. And um, gemstones, people are very into understanding the gemstone properties more so than ever. Like it's become almost a little more mainstream. I hear Jeff and Ricky talking about the holistic benefits of gemstones, and I'm like, what? Okay, I can get behind that. And I think that's also something that's happening. I don't know that that's innovative, but I do feel like that's something to be aware of if it relates to what you do and what makes it possible for you to keep doing what you're doing. But as far as innovation, oh my gosh, it's so hard to know. So hard to know. Like I said, this year is very tricky. It's very tricky when it's an election year, and things typically stay a little close to what we're seeing already, which is hard. It makes it very hard to predict. I love your sash. It looks beautiful. Mm. Do I see a change with designers working together or avenues to reach beaters? Creative Castle Bead Soup Zoom workshops and Becky Haley's Artisan Showcase on Zoom. There is so much collaboration going on, and it's wonderful to see. I feel there's always been pockets of people who have worked together, but it seems much more intentional in working collaboratively in a way that is very supportive and helpful and diverse. I think that's also the other piece of it is diversity, so that you're reaching a broader audience. And then I see Becky's doing so many things, so many things. Let's see, what else does that question say? Oh, and so do I think that it's different? Do it be designers working together or avenues to reach beaters? So the other piece of that is, getting back to the slide that I shared earlier, um, that Hacker highlighted was that people are doing so much on a daily basis to reach people live and in person. Um, I personally, my live communications is with a private group. I don't have it out on social on a very public level. Mine is more private. Um, but I bring in people for that group. And so to me, that's collaborative, but it's not very publicly focused. Where other people they're just out there every single day. I think every time I go to my feed, Candy Cooper's scrolling. She's there. She's got a live. JTV is doing live programming um, that's available on social media, as is Art Beads. So there's so many different people trying to reach the masses, and I think for me as a maker, I'm tuning in where I feel there's value in my time and what it is I want to learn, especially if there's a new tool or a new something. In the metal clay industry, there's so much innovation going on in metal clay. I don't know that that interests you for me to go into any of that, but there's a lot of innovation going on in metal clay. There's, obviously new tools that are out there. Uh, but I think there's less of a barrier for people to work together, even if you have a competing businesses where it's much more collaborative, which I think is wonderful. I think it's wonderful. I think that, not that there was this big wall that kept us apart, but I think it definitely was a little more careful. People were a lot more careful with who they worked with. We're now, it's almost like I'll say the influencers. Melissa Shippey, the people who are really the makers that are reaching the masses, then them working together and collaborating. Look at Betsy's retreats in Colorado. She brings in so many different people, all different disciplines. I hope that answers the question. I don't know that it was very succinct. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you so much for having me here today and for giving me the opportunity to share with you a vision from other people and to be a part of this amazing celebration. My heartfelt congratulations to all of you, and my wish for all of you to continue being happy and supporting each other. And I look forward to being a member. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.